long way in the short. So
Sorry
in
for
any
that.
case, I was involved in helping. Paul introduced me to a number of owners, and I helped a lot of owners build their new stadiums and come up with ways to generate revenue. And we were one of the first to actually put a corporate name on a stadium in the United States.
What was that, Frank?
That was the first one was 3Com, which was the old Candlestick Park in
Ah,
San Francisco.
been there.
And that was a real complicated deal because the stadium was owned by the city, and not only that, they gave the advertising rights inside the stadium, the signage, to a third party company to sell.
Mhm.
So, and not only that, the San Francisco Giants baseball team played there. So I was hired by the San Francisco 49ers and Ed DeBartolo, the owner, and Carmen Policy, the president, to sell the naming rights of a stadium where a baseball team played, where a third party owned the advertising rights, and where the city owned the stadium.
Right.
So it was a complicated negotiation, to say the least. So
Yeah. So in all of your career, and I'm sorry for those who are just catching this on a recording, I did forget, but the stuff he shared earlier is something you should know already anyway. So um, my question is, throughout your career, you worked on a lot of different deals, a lot of different properties. What was your favorite, and perhaps what was your least favorite? Now, I'm not going to say this was it, but we met years ago when I was at the Football Foundation, and you were trying to sell sponsorship, corporate sponsorship for the College Football Hall of Fame, which was then housed in South Bend, Indiana. I was hired by a guy by the name of Bob Cassiola, who Frank knows very well because he was his coach at Princeton. Bob is he's salt of the earth, one of the greatest guys and people that I know. And Bob, I said to Bob my first day, because they were building it, and I said, why are we building a Hall of Fame in South? Listen, we all know Notre Dame is there, right? But how many times? And by the way, getting to South Bend, Indiana, I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried to do it. It's a pain in the ass. It's
not easy,
so
not easy. Yeah.
go ahead.
Uh, I honestly, it'd be hard for me to say what was something that was my least favorite. I've been incredibly blessed, incredibly fortunate to kind of pick and choose what I work on and not be forced to to work on something because I needed the money, thank God, or whatever. So I really haven't had any real clunkers. We actually moved. We were part of moving the Hall of Fame to South Bend, and we did pretty well. We had one of our clients was Burger King,
Right.
nationally, and I was doing a lot of the sports sponsorship for Burger King, and we made them the title sponsor. We actually put a Burger King inside the College Football Hall of Fame in South Bend, and we made do with what we could. The traffic there through there wasn't all that great,
Yeah.
but we gave it the old college try, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Favorites. I mean, yeah, uh, I've represented so many great people. One of my favorite deals ever was doing was the golfer Payne Stewart, who
Mm.
passed some years ago, died in a tragic plane crash. Um, Payne was a dear friend. He taught me how to play golf. I, things happen for a reason. I met his agent who died in that plane crash with him. Because he represented a bunch of coaches in the National Football League, very famous coaches, Mike Ditka, uh, uh, Dan Reeves, Joe Gibbs, Bill Parcells, who were all
Mm.
represented by the same agent. And I did some deals with the coaches putting the clothes that the coaches wore on the sidelines. Nobody had ever done that before, we wound up selling the stuff that the coaches were wearing because they got a lot of exposure on television. And I was out to dinner with the agent, and I just asked him who else he represented, and he happened to mention a golfer, Payne Stewart, who wore knickers. And there's now, I don't know if all of you know, golf very well, but there's an award in Payne's name because he became one of the most well-respected gentlemen, in the golf business. And I put NFL clothes. I said to his agent, well, is he an NFL fan? And he said, yeah. I go, well, the knickers kind of look like football pants. It'd be really great if I can dress them up in NFL outfits, and I'll get the exposure not only from football, but I'll get exposure from golf, because the networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC at the time, before Fox had the NFL, before Fox even really existed, I said they all broadcast golf. So when they're showing golf and they see Payne Stewart dressed in an NFL outfit, they're going to mention it. They're going to say, "Here's Payne Stewart wearing his Dallas Cowboys shirt, and he's got to deal with the NFL, and you can tune in Sunday to watch the NFL on CBS or whatever it might be." And that worked out. That worked out terrifically. It was a great deal and a great friendship, and I got a lot of notoriety for that, and one of my favorite deals.
Very interesting, because if you guys don't know, I mean, you should Google Payne Stewart. It was heartbreaking. I mean, he won the U.S. Open. He did wear those knickers as Frank told us, but he was, by all accounts, just one of the nicest guys ever. And his agent was Robert Fraley, I believe.
Right.
And so, if you don't know, it was a plane crash. It was a private plane. I think there was a door that wasn't sealed or something, and they all
No,
passed
there was a
out.
malfunction in the oxygen
Oh,
system,
it's the
and
oxygen. I thought
they,
it was something. Yeah, it was definitely,
they
but they all
actually
passed out, right? And
yeah, they just passed out.
the plane just kept going until it ran out of gas. So very tragic event. But like Frank says, things happen for a reason, I guess. But I'm not going to monopolize this. I do have other things I can talk to Frank about. If you have a question, please put your hand up or ask the question as we're going through, rather than just making this a two-person dialogue. Anybody with a question for Frank?
Sure,
Go.
Natalie.
Yeah, just as a lot of us are soon to be graduating, what's like, how did you get your foot in the door, and like what's some advice you'd give to us just going like up and coming professionals in the industry?
Great question. I speak to a lot of you like this. I've spoken to, I was before there were actually uh, master's degrees in sports. Wasn't that long ago, but there are obviously a lot of programs these days. So I was part of founding some of the very first, and was on the board of governors or whatever for some of the original master's programs. So it's a great question. First of all, the fact that you're doing this is a feather in your cap. It goes a long way when someone's looking to hire, because you've expressed an interest and you've specified that you want to make a living in this kind of career. So you've taken one real good step towards getting a job in the business. One of the things, if I ever did write a book, I'd talk about preparedness and being prepared for whatever you want to do. And some of you here reached out to me and hooked up with me on LinkedIn, and I would say that's a credit to you, right? So people want to see that you make the effort. People want to see that you're committed. So if you looked me up and you looked at my history or whatever, knowing I was going to speak to you today, when I used to go around and talk, and I had my own agency, and people were looking to be hired, and I was hiring a lot, that would be the first criteria. I would say, who I'd talk to a class in person. I'd say, who looked me up, who knows my history, and I'd see who raised their hands, and I'd say, now I'm going to call on you and ask you something. So if you didn't really do it, put your hand down. You'd see how many hands went down. And I'd say, okay, so whoever raised their hand there and whoever actually looked me up and knows, you can leave your card. You can come and get my card after this session, because you thought about it. You planned, and you planned ahead. So I would say, make sure you take advantage of every opportunity you can to make connections and to follow up and to get your name out in front of people. Clearly, it's a tough industry, because companies think that they can hire people with summer interns and so on and not pay them very much, and everybody wants to be in the industry. So it's tough in that way, but it's all a matter of networking. There's so many opportunities. I would tell you to keep a broad perspective on things. Everybody thinks, oh, I got to go to work for a team and or a league, and that's really not not true. I mean, there's so many agencies out there in the business that consult for these teams and leagues and organizing bodies. There's also corporations that you're probably not thinking about that spend a lot of money in sports. And so they need people internally to help them manage their relationships in the sports business and manage the agencies that they work with and so on, execute once they agree to a deal with the sports entity, to execute that and to activate it. And the activation also, a lot of times falls flat. People invest a lot of money up front, do a tough negotiation, think that the league or the team or the organizing body is going to help them execute or activate their sponsorship. That's just not the case. The leagues don't have, tons of manpower. They don't want to spend the money to manage your business and manage the corporate business and execute that. So there's a lot of corporations out there. The fields that are involved in sports have grown so much. I am on the board of a huge healthcare organization in New Jersey called Hackensack Meridian Health. We spend a lot of money. We're a huge sponsor to Giants. We're a huge sponsor to Red Bulls. So even within our organization, we have, I'm the head of the marketing committee on the board, and we've hired 2 or 3 people on our end just to manage our relationships and sponsorships in sports. So, you would never think, oh, maybe I should apply to a healthcare corporation for a job in sports, but it's out there and it's available, and they're looking for people like you, who want to get into the business of the ground floor. And they can use that help. So expand your horizons and work at it and work out your relationships, and don't be single-minded in your approach that you need to work for a team or a league. And I can tell you this, somebody might someday get mad at me, but don't go and work for a team in the ticket department. Okay. Just don't do it. Okay. Because companies all the teams rather make these false promises that if you come and you work for us and you sell tickets and you do a good job, we'll promote you into this department or that department or whatever. Just don't do it. It's a churn and burn kind of thing. I don't even know why they make promises. It's a false promise. I've talked to a lot of young people, a lot of relatives of mine, a lot of people who have ultimately come and worked for me who started out that way and were disappointed in their path. And I've had some people leave me from internships and go to work for teams, even though I told them not to, and they quickly called me up and said, "Oh my God, you were right. What the heck did I do?" So I just forewarn you, I don't recommend you going into the business, breaking into cold calling people for ticket sales. So
I like that advice, Cole. We'll get to you in one second, but just to respond to Frank, I agree with that. We tell people, if you want to go work in a ticketing office, you don't need this degree. They'll hire you right now. Just go. Right.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think these people have higher aspirations. I'm not saying you can't work your way out of that ticket department, but it's difficult because you're in there with everybody else who wants to get out of that department and get into another, either sports marketing or PR, whatever it is. And I would say this also, if you have an affinity for a team, if you're a big Yankee fan, I'm a Met fan, but if you're a big Yankee fan, we know a guy, I'm sure Frank knows him by the name of Harvey Green. Harvey Green was a big Yankee fan. He's been with the Dolphins forever as their vice president of communications, but Harvey got the job as the PR director for the Yankees and was miserable. He had to work with George Steinbrenner. I mean, he hated it. And so he got the hell out of there like in 2 years. So I'm just saying.
Well, here's something just to think about. A very close cousin of mine, a fellow by the name of Rich Perello, went and became, under George Steinbrenner, became his senior vice president of all revenue generation. So all sponsorship and so on. And if you were in those days, if you aspired to be in this business, that might have been one of the crown jewels. You would think. You would say, "Oh my God, if I could be the head guy for sponsorship of the New York Yankees, one of the most valuable teams, if not the most valuable team in the world, that would be the ultimate job." And you talk about being miserable. I mean, just understand what you're getting into, right? 80, 81 home games where you're going to be there most nights until 1, 2 in the morning after the game is over. You're going to be hosting sponsors, or you're going to be doing something in hospitality, or you're going to be doing something, and you have to be there. You know, George is going to be there. The owner is going to be there. You're going to have to be there. So you're talking about, and you know, he would require that whoever was coming into the office beat him into the office. So you know, this poor guy would have to get into the office 6:30 in the morning and make sure he was there before George got there. And so he was working from 6:30 in the morning to, you know, till after midnight, 81, at least 81 times a year. And then these teams play on holidays, they play on Sundays, they play on weekends. So this is not a 40-hour work week. You don't go to work Friday, you know, Monday to Friday if you go work for a team, right? You're at the mercy of the schedule of the team and so on.
Yeah.
And the other downside, and I'm not saying that it's not something to aspire to, but the other downside is if you have a losing team, there's nothing like being in the office of a team that's on a losing streak or not doing well. It's just not a happy environment, not a happy place to be. So you have to consider that when you're evaluating, you know, what you want to do. Now there are a lot of great jobs, and there is a lot of fun to it, if you have the time and you can afford to do that, and you don't have a family and kids and so on to worry about, then it's worth a shot. But just make sure you know what you're getting into.
I hear you. Cole, what's your question for Frank?
Hi, Frank. I'm Cole. Nice to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. I just wanted to say I was reading a little bit about you. This article was on Deadspin from a few years back. And there was a guy named Paul, the former commissioner of the NFL, and it says that having him in your corner was one of the main reasons the quarterback club was able to take off. The field of sports is like constantly growing, and everybody wants to be a part of it, especially our age. Would you say there's an emphasis more on who you know compared to what you know in this specific industry in order to be like successful at the highest level, or there's a balance between it?
Um, Listen, I think I tell them I have 3 grown daughters, and well, married, and 3 son-in-laws, and um, I've always told them there's a balance there. You know, who you know who you know can be important. You know, there's no denying that. But look, like I said, you're committed to getting a master's degree in this business. You're showing you're showing a willingness to commit hours and you know, years to get this education. So you're doing the right thing there. I think I think it's absolutely possible to not necessarily have to know somebody to get into the business. I think you can get into the business on your own merits in a lot of different ways if you pursue things the right way and you're persistent. And you can't get discouraged. You have to stay with it. It might take some time. You might have a circuitous route. Look, there's another thing too, and I don't know if Dave would agree with me, but you don't have to necessarily immediately go into the sports business. There are things that are involved. I learned so much from working at an advertising agency. I worked on the strategic part of things, and I learned marketing, and that marketing education was invaluable to me throughout my career. You know, knowing what's harder than telling people, you know, what the difference is in soap or toothpaste or cola. You know, can you really tell the difference between Pepsi and Coke? I mean, you know, so how do you sell that stuff? How do you package that stuff? Who are you talking to? What's your point of difference? Those kinds of things were really important. So sometimes you can come to sports, even though you're getting a master's degree, you can come into sports in a roundabout way. And like I said, maybe work for a corporation that spends money in sports, or even get into a marketing company or a PR company that works in sports, that can open the door for you, and you can meet people and get in that way. So you have to stay with it.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that's great. I think it's great advice. We tell people this, first and foremost, this is a business program. Yes, it's got sports in the name, but we have a lot of people who graduate from this program who've started their own business having taken our entrepreneurship class. I love that. And the fact, I mean, we have people who have worked in agencies. Maybe they've worked in sports and gone the other way. You know, sports is great. I've worked, you know, a long time in the sports industry. I never thought I'd be doing this for the last 17 years. So you don't know what doors are going to open to you. But I agree with Frank that if you go establish yourself, whether it's an agency, look, we have Manhattanville College is cornered by Pepsi and MasterCard. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
not only the two huge companies, worldwide global companies, they have huge sports marketing departments. So, you know that's a benefit and to us as well. And we've done a lot of stuff with those guys over the years, and we hope to do it again. You know, if we can get this program, you know, under Dr. Sanchez back on the right path. But just want to tell a quick story, and obviously for you, Frank, just so you know, a lot of these folks already work in college athletics, and so I think they appreciate the hours, and thank you for sharing that because that is true. You know, even in college athletics, I know they're putting in hours, pre, after, whatever, and weekends, holidays. Yeah, you know, when you turn on the show on Christmas Day or Thanksgiving Day, and you see the production, you have to realize there are hundreds of people behind the scene, not just the guys who are calling the game, right? So, any other questions for Frank right now?
There's a lot going on in sports these days, right?
Yeah.
We got the NCAA tournament going on. Anybody have any questions about NIL or any of that? Are you making money with NIL? Anybody out there? What's any
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on
athletes
that.
here?
I mean, well, what are your thoughts? I mean, because obviously this is the brave new world we're in with this whole, especially for college athletics, right?
Yeah, that's one way to put it, a brave new world.
No,
I think this
I don't
it's
like
part
it, but that's,
chaos.
I'm
It's
old
part
school.
chaos, I think. I'll tell you, I wish I was 20 years younger. I swear. And I would have had my agency. I would have left everything else and I would have went after the NIL market. I would have made my agency the first and foremost in the business. No, I was always a proponent of college athletes getting paid. I was on record many, many years ago that way. I thought it was just horrible that everybody would say to me, well, you know, these people are on scholarship, so they're getting an education for free. I said, you know, I compared it to my older parents. I said, my parents were working class, Italian immigrants. So they owned their house. They ultimately paid off their house. So everybody thought, okay, so you got your house. I compared the scholarship to like a house. I said, you can't take that and go buy food. You can't take that and go buy a ticket to the movie theater or take your girlfriend for pizza or boyfriend for pizza. I mean, you just, yeah, so you got a scholarship, but you got no money in your pocket. You can't go home to visit your parents on holidays. So a lot of these kids come from, not so well off families and so on. And I said, it's just ridiculous that university or a coach or whatever should benefit from these kids putting in working full time, and putting in 6-hour days practicing and not having a penny in their pocket, and that leads to trouble, right? That leads to them signing autographs or something and getting caught. And I said it's a bad system. So anyway, I'm glad that that's come around, but I think. Unfortunately, what happened in concert was the NCAA abandoned their restriction on transfer, and they opened up this transfer portal so that you don't have to sit out a year. And so that's what's created chaos, because now NIL is factoring into basically free agency at the college level. So, the athletes can jump from one college to another and without any penalty or without any restriction, and they can go to the highest bidder, and unfortunately, a lot of schools are going to have to start eliminating sports. They're just not going to be able to afford to compete. I know you've all probably read about the Dartmouth case where the basketball players, claim to be employees, and they've won their case with the National Labor Board, and that's going to have incredible ramifications. I shudder to think what's going to happen with that, because I'm very involved in a Princeton program. So there's 100 kids on the on the Princeton football team. And so imagine if they're just making minimum wage $15 an hour. They unionize or whatever, and they make $15 an hour. Just think about the expense. Let's say minimum of 3 hours a day. They spend more than that at practicing and watching film and so on, and with football. The cost for 100 kids times $15 an hour uh, adds up to millions of dollars for the season. And I can tell you that university cannot afford at a place like that to pay those kids. And at Princeton, there's 39 intercollegiate sports. If they have to pay the athletes, I don't know if they could afford 10. So who's going to win in that? And
Yeah.
I don't know what good that does ultimately. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping at some point Congress steps in or whatever, but there's going to have to be some regulation. There's going to have to be something done about that. So.
Oh boy, Congress and the NCAA, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, well,
Michael,
I don't know how
Michael,
else it gets solved, because the NCAA threw up their hands and just said it's all according to the state. And that's why you have these collectives now where, big investors can put up, many millions of dollars into a collective and pay their athletes at the college. So, the rich are going to get richer,
yeah.
University
Well,
of Texas and so on is just going to be able to pay their players,
well, you don't have to agree with this, but the NCAA has been a poorly run organization since my time in college
Oh,
athletics, and I mean,
the
just
worst,
horrible, the
the
worst.
worst, the worst.
Michael, what's your question for Frank?
Hey Frank, I just wanted to ask just kind of on the NIL, because of March Madness going on. So I kind of do agree, like, some players, get paid a lot, and some of these basketball players specifically are going to go professional, so they're already going to make money. But I think like some of these athletes, for instance, the kid on Oakland who just like had a couple deals done. I don't know if you saw like the little commercial he shot for TurboTax. So like, do you think there should be like a cap or like uh some kind of regulation for some of these guys? Because for him, for instance, like he's not going to be playing professionally, but
Right.
this could help him make a little bit of money just to kind of get himself,
Yeah,
started. So
I never
what do you
believe in a
think?
cap. I've been a player guy for a long time. I represented a lot of players. I'm not a cap guy. Listen, I believe in I believe in a free market system. It goes back to my economic days at Princeton. I think, if you can get paid, you should get paid. And when I represented players, a lot of players, I was always trying to get the top dollar for them. So I'm not into artificial caps, but listen, I think there could be a better system put in place. If I was to be at the NCAA and propose to regulate NIL, I would say we're gonna take a piece of what everybody makes, some portion of whatever a student athlete makes, and we're gonna put it into a pot. And then we're gonna spread this pot to all the athletes that compete, men, women, whatever, across the board. And I think that can be accomplished. There's a couple of other ways it can be accomplished too. I think, for instance, the licensing of the universities is done largely through a couple of organizations. One is Collegiate Licensing Corporation down in Atlanta. For years they could not license of the current players. Now they can. So you can buy a jersey of a current player on a university football or basketball team or whatever it might be. Before you couldn't. So if you can do that now, and you could market name and number T-shirts and so on with a player in college, I think they can generate. The NFL generates the majority of their business and apparel in jersey sales. If college becomes that, there's a percentage that could be taken from that and put into a pretty large pool of money that could keep some money in everybody's pocket at the college level. And I think some system of sharing is where everything should go. So, I don't think there's. If I'm the quarterback, of Alabama, I went and visited with his parents 2 years ago, and somebody asked me to come down and see if I could help, raise some NIL money. He was already making $3 million. And, to me, what do you say to your linemen? What do you say? What do you say to your receivers when you're making $3 million and they're making nothing? If it's me, I wouldn't mind saying, I'm sharing some of that. I'm sharing 10%. I'm sharing 20% of my money with the rest of my teammates or whatever it might be. I think that's a solution.
Yeah, Kentucky Fried Chicken dinner only goes so far, I guess. So, Anthony, what do you got, bud?
Hi Frank, thanks for talking to us today. I wanted to ask you a bit about an interview you did in Sports Business Journal back in 2013. So quite a long way away. But one of the questions was asked was a marketing strategy that you like, and your answer, which I loved, was know who you are and don't deviate. And my question was, in this sort of ever-changing kind of social climate that we have right now, if you were asked that question today, would it still be the same answer? And if it would, how can companies sort of stay true to who they are and not deviate while adapting to the sort of changing climate?
Well, I think I'd still have the same answer. I really do. I don't think you have to deviate from who you are. I think you have to. You should have. It all gets the culture anyway. But I think if you're strategic in what you do, look, the whole world that you're going to go and want to work in evolves around corporations getting involved in sports. They pay the way. And the reason they pay the way, and it goes back many, many years. Think about some of you in Little League or whatever it might be, the little signs on the fence. What shirts did you wear? Were there local businesses that sponsored your team and paid for your uniforms or whatever it might be, right? The reason why we're in this is because companies want to reach a target audience, and they can't reach them now, and all the disparate things that are out there. Think about this. Last year, the NFL had 93 out of the top 100 rated shows on television. 93 out of the top 100 were NFL related programs, mostly live. So companies are spending money there because they're reaching a target audience that they want to talk to. Years ago, it used to be they'd spend money in sports because they couldn't reach men. And don't hold me to this, but a long time ago, long before all of you women were born, women were watching television, men weren't. And so the only way to reach men were to try and affiliate with the sports events. Now it's all over, right? There's so many options out there, and there's great things happening, like Caitlin Clark in Iowa. I mean, it's just awesome, but these companies want to be strategic. They want to reach a certain person. They want to reach a certain age group, and they also want to have an affiliation with somebody that parallels their culture. So I want to be with a winner. I want to be with this team. I want to be with that team. I want to support this, and so if they have, if they have a certain culture and if they have their platform, they should stick to their guns and stay to that, and run everything against that criteria. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Felicia, you're gonna have to unmute.
Hi.
There you go.
I just have a question about the NIL. So I was wondering, is it still the same confusion about international students can't get any money because they are on a student visa for NIL, or is that solved yet?
I don't think it's solved yet, and I hate it. I don't know, Dave, I don't know if you know if that's been solved yet, but
No.
I think it's unfair. I don't know. It's tough dealing with the government. It's tough dealing with the government. I don't think it's fair. It's again, who's standing up for the international athlete? What body is representing them? That's what's so tough, right? Is it the university? Maybe, but they're not gonna They're not going to change the law. This is so new that that's going to have to be sorted out and going to have to be fought in the courts and whatever. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I just think there's so many ramifications for taxes and what state you make your money in. And I've dealt with this with all of my players over the years. We had to fill out tax forms in 50 different states when our athletes were playing in different states and so on. So it's complex. So I hear what you're saying, and I hope it can get sorted out. I really do.
Yeah, because it's technically they make money on campus, even though it's from external companies. So I think it's kind of a water breaker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would think. I would think that the agencies who are representing the athletes in NIL can help a lot and help sort that out. I'm not an expert at it right now, I'll be honest with you, but I would think that I would try to attack that in whatever way I could to help out the athletes that I was representing. So,
Cassidy?
Thank you.
I mean, to go off that, I recently saw Aaliyah Edwards. She plays for the UConn women's basketball team.
Mhm.
She's from Canada, and she just got a deal with Adidas Canada. So do you think that other athletes are going to do that within their own country? Like you'll see more like deals with like companies in their own countries, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Listen, everything that applied in the pros is now going to be applied to college. And before long, it's going to be applied to high school. Watch. It's going to, we're going to have high school athletes doing NIL deals before long. What's going to prevent that, right? And as long as they're 18 years old, that'll be something that'll be fought. But anyway, I think, yes, I know Shohei Ohtani's going to be he's actually going on in like 30 minutes with his press conference today. But athletes for years have made money. Pro athletes for years have made money from the countries where they've come from, with sponsorship from the countries they've come from. So yes, I think that'll happen in NIL. I think it should happen. And that gets around this whole visa thing that we were talking about earlier. So I hope it happens. More and more international students are coming to play in the United States. It's a great thing. It makes for a lot of great competition. And it also, I don't want to sound, Pollyanna here, but it also gets the world together. You know what I mean? It also, when you play with people from different countries and learn about their cultures, and everybody realizes we're all putting on the same uniform and playing for the same team, it's kind of cool. So who knows?
I think it's a great point.
I think sports is great for that from all different aspects. I grew up playing with a lot of minority guys in cities in New Jersey, and became friends, and learned to get over my whatever my thoughts were growing up, and understanding that we're all just the same people. And I think sports is the great equalizer for that. That's why I love the Olympics and things like that.
And really, that's truly what sports should be doing and has done for generations. But I think obviously we have several international students in this class, and it actually leads to one of my questions we've touched on a little bit here, is the globalization of all of the leagues. Obviously, NFL is playing games all over the world now. We have Major League Baseball just played 2 games in Korea before the season really even started. Obviously this should, I would think, open up. And other sports doing the same thing, NBA, NHL, and the Olympics, as you say. But the Olympics are also an area now where you're talking about pay for play, and that stopped years ago, where they allowed professionals to play in the Olympics. But what do you see on a global level for everything? Whether it's professional sports, college sports. I mean, is this going to be something? Because we really are hypocrites if we're not going to be, if these international students are going to be limited, but yet we want to take our sports and make them global.
Well, as I said before, I think it's totally unfair for the international students to be limited. I think that's got to change. Again, the question is who changes it,
Yeah.
how do you get through a government regulation and so on in that. especially as we deal with immigration and so on, we don't want to go there.
Okay, so
But I think in terms of globalization, like for instance, just today, the NFL announced a big step forward in their global policies, and they added a bunch of countries to the teams having affiliations. The New York Giants got Germany, and there were four other teams that got affiliations with new countries, so they can negotiate relationships. They can negotiate grassroots programs. They can negotiate television rights and broadcast rights and so on. So I think all the leagues will continue to globalize, and there's more and more international players in all these sports in the country now. Just the NBA is an incredible example. Even Major League Baseball, obviously, with they tend to go more in terms of the South American countries and some of the islands and so on, where the Dominican and so on, where they get a lot of players these days. But the sport is certainly globalizing for sure, all of the sports, and I think that's a great thing. Again, I think it brings people together. So.
all right, we're gonna start to wrap up, but and if you have any more questions, please put your hand up and we'll get you a question before we sign off here. But I do want to address Natalie's question, which I did think was very pertinent to what we're doing here. And obviously, this is a sport marketing class. Doesn't mean you all want to work in sports marketing. Some of you coaches, some of you want to maybe work in public relations or media or whatever it is in the sports industry, or maybe outside of the sports industry. But this should apply to every single one of you. The fact is, the tools in your quiver are your resume. Your cover letter is a tool to get the resume read. Your resume is a tool to get you an interview. When you get that foot in the door, then it's on you, right? And I tell you the story for a reason, and I'm sure Frank knows this gentleman, Dave Newman, who was vice president of sports marketing for the Mets for a long time, USTA, one of the really good sports marketers in our industry. Told me this story, and I just tell it as a telltale for you guys. And when you say you want to work, let's say you get to work and you get an interview for your favorite team. Well, he was working for the Mets and had picked out, obviously somebody to interview, and so the cover letter did its job, the resume did its job, and the kid was coming in for an interview, and he had a nice suit on, but he was wearing a Met hat, thinking he was going to impress Mr. Newman. Mr. Newman said to him, stop. He stopped at the door. I want you to go down the hall and buy as many tickets as you like, because that's not what we need here. I don't need fans. I need people who are going to add to my bottom line. Okay. Now, that's a hard lesson for that guy, but it's a good story to tell people, because it's not about being a fan, guys. It's not about, you can love your team. And I know a guy who is very high up in the Yankee organization who's a Mets fan. At that point, it doesn't matter to him, right? It's a job and it's a business, and that's what it's all about. So I just wanted to share that, because, as you go out, or as and by the way, your resume is something that your best friend or your mother, your father, whatever, have somebody look at it who's going to really give you criticism and a critical eye. Okay. Somebody like Frank who will say, this is shit, or it needs work. That's what you need to hear, right? So you don't want to just hear somebody say, oh, it looks great, and meanwhile you have 6 typos on it, and it's going to get tossed in the can, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? So don't blow that. Yeah, I agree with all that. I worked with David at the NFL many years ago, so he's a good friend.
Yeah.
And I've had all sorts of experiences interviewing people. There's some real stupidity, people chewing gum, real crazy stuff. I assume you've all got to this level, and you're not going to do that. But there are some things I think, writing's a lost art these days. I think if you can demonstrate an ability to write, I think that separates you from others. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, communication is really important. And in this day of texts and social media and so on, everybody's lost the ability to write in a longer form and communicate in a longer form. You get into a sales pitch and, you can't shorthand it. Somebody wants to know why they're going to spend X amount of money and millions of dollars on something. You got to have your thoughts together. You got to have your presentation together. Why are you going to be with us versus somebody else? Why are you going to spend money with me versus somebody else? And the ability to communicate is great, not only in writing but also in verbal communication. Practice. If you're going for an interview, practice. Have somebody asking you questions. Have somebody challenge you. Get practice in. We do this down at Princeton. We train all of our athletes. We have many sessions, and we have people coming in from all professions, training them in interviews to make an impression. So listen, it's what you put into it. You got to work hard at it. Nothing's going to be handed to you on a silver platter, frankly, even if you know somebody, because I've had friends who sent their kids to me and I had to tell them the hard way, your son or daughter just wasn't prepared. And I'm sorry, they didn't make a very good impression. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board. I can't hire somebody like that. And they come in thinking, that the job is theirs because their father knows me well. And that's not doing me any good.
Yeah.
But I've also had, I've had surprises. I've had people surprise me and impress me in different ways. And if you can make yourself different, if you can make yourself better, you'll get noticed.
Wow. I mean, I think we're going to end there because that last piece, that was a real nugget right there. And I agree with Frank wholeheartedly about the writing, guys. Writing is, we hear it from people all over the industry. Please send us people who can write. You're writing business plans, you're writing marketing proposals. You have to be able to communicate in written form. And I see your writing, obviously, a lot of it as we go through the semester. And you should just be trying to get better, tighter. Even I try, and typos aside, because I'm the king of typos, which piss me off, but it is, I got to be more careful too. So, all right. So Frank, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I owe you lunch. Let's do that sometime soon.
Sure.
And guys,
I wish you all well. I wish you
Yep.
all good luck, and I hope you do well. And it's a great business to be in. When you love what you're doing, it's not work. So if you can do something that you really enjoy, it's a worthwhile career. And I had a lot of friends of mine who went into Wall Street and other professions, made a lot of money. But I got to tell you, every time we get together to this day, they'd rather talk sports with me than about their own jobs. So yeah, there's something to be said for that. So good luck, and I wish you all well.
Thanks, Frank. Guys, stay for 1 second. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to put in a link on on Blackboard for discussion. Please post your thoughts there. You don't have to do it right now, but you have all week to do that. And thank you. Thanks again to Frank. See you soon.
Take care.
Thanks,
Okay, bye.
guys. Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
All right,
Thank
bye-bye.
you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Gonna end it, guys. You all set? All right. We out.